Hello, welcome to the quick start guide for the Ultimate RTS camera. So what you want to do is download the RTS camera from the marketplace and add it to your project, and you should end up with an RTS camera folder here. So if we just hit play, we'll just go through how it works first. So there's a reticle appeared in the center. This is because you haven't pressed any sort of input yet, and the system dynamically detects between gamepads and mouse. So once I click once, it's going to go, oh, you're using a mouse and keyboard, so we'll get rid of that. So movement, currently set up for the WSAD keys. And it moves around as you would expect. It's a smooth move, there's no jagged stops. If you press Q and E, then we get a smooth rotate. It just rotates around the point. If you roll the mouse wheel backwards or forwards and you get a zoom, it's a linear zoom, so it's not a zoom on a sphere. There's some basic framework laid for that, but that's not what we're currently using. If you hold down the middle mouse wheel and move the mouse around, then you get more of a free look. So you can move both up and down and left and right. Combined with the movement keys, it gives you a nice fluid way of moving around. See what else is there. We have edge motion. So we move to the edge of the screen, moves around. It should move in the corners as well. Yes, kind of some degree. Yeah, I think it's just plain editor. The corners have a bit of trouble. It seems to work fine in a proper standalone game. Okay, if we click on buildings, then the camera jumps to the building, and there's two different frameworks for how that works, and it's up to you which one you wish to use, either through an interface or more directly through using the line trace detection. If we click on a bot, which is easier said than done, then we go into a follow camera. Any jump can also be a follow camera, and as you noticed, I did a preset zoom, so you can also set your zoom percentage from 0 to 1 on how much it should zoom in when you see it. You can zoom in and out without breaking the lock, but if you move away, then the follow stops. There's no buttons you have to click to unlock or lock, you just move away. If you wanted to lock that, you can. There's also the ability to perform a jump that cannot be broken. So if I jump to a building and then move, you can cancel the movement at any point, so you can break that jump. But there is an option to do a lock jump, such as more for, should we say, cinematics or something you really needed the player to know. And if you use this, then you need to call the unlock function later. So perhaps when the cinematic ends or a dialogue is finished or the user presses a button, then you can break the locked jump. In the UI, there's two buttons up here, which is just a fixed jump. Obviously, these are horrible looking buttons, but it's just there to show you how you call the fixed increment jump. They're currently doing 45-degree jumps, and you can customize that as you need. If I turn on my gamepad, I should full screen this. There we go. So I've pushed an input on the controller, and immediately the UI has disappeared, and a reticle has appeared on the screen. Now I can use the left thumbstick to move around. Again, same as before, it's a smooth movement, and the right thumbstick performs the same free look you saw with the middle mouse. There's a capped angle on how far up and down it can go. You can customize that as you need. If we move over a building, it turns blue, and it's up to you if you want to implement a jump on these. Like, as you can see there, it does do a jump, but obviously you're already mostly over it because you have to be on the center for press A. Then it just jumps me to the origin of the building, and it should work on the guys, but these little guys were a terrible choice. There we go. If I pull the left trigger or right trigger, then we get a zoom in and out. And that's basically the implementation for Gamepad. You can add as many buttons as you like here. There's lots of things tied up. But for the camera, that should be all you need. So I've tried to use as minimal buttons as possible so that you've got as much as you need for your game. Okay. This pack also has full mobile input, so you can pinch to zoom, you can two-finger rotate to rotate, and you can drag on the screen to drag. And it works as you kind of would expect any mobile game to work in this sort of camera. Okay. Okay, so a quick overview of the blueprints and the way it's set up. So if we go into blueprints, we have just a small amount of things to look at. So we have the BBC mobile inputs. We've separated out all mobile inputs into their own component because they have their own tick, because they have their own processing time. And if you don't need mobile input, you can just not use it. Save yourself a few frames and ignore it. If we open this guy up, variables are separated into private and options, like the rest of my blueprints are. And we have a drag multiplier, a zoom speed, and a rotation speed. You can tweak these here. Drag multiplier is the one you don't need to tweak so much, but you can play with these and get a feel. The default values are pretty decent, so you just kind of go from there. And yeah, shouldn't really need to do anything in here. We have an input type updater. All this does is it lets anyone who's listening know that we're using the gamepad or not. This is mainly get sent to the HUD, so the HUD knows whether it needs to change to a gamepad-based layout or a mouse and keyboard-based layout. Camera interface is something that any building or character or something can implement, and they have the jump to actor, jump to location, or restore the lock jump control. And these, for the target, you just want to pass in the player character. This is just this one of two ways to perform the jump. Then we have the RTS character himself, called RTS camera, sorry. It's fairly heavy blueprint, so you may want to subclass this and do your game in the subclass. And if you need to tweak or change or grab anything, and you can access it from the variables. So privates are marked as private as well, so they won't be accessible in subclasses. So you only need to worry about the options. So we've got a set of options. I'm not going to go through them here. You can see what they are, but it allows you to customize the feel of the camera. There's also modifiers, allow any camera movement, which you can tweak if required, and this just locks them. So if, say, you wanted some sort of dialogue or cutscene to play out, you could just freeze the character for a second. This doesn't lock rotation, it only locks movement. And then info, again, these are mostly just getters in case you want to find out, hey, are they using the gamepad, or what's my HUD? And the main trace hit, which should be very useful for your game, which just is found here actually. So we perform a line trace all the time, a sphere trace to be exact, and just returns whatever you want it to really. You can use it however you want. We're just currently using it to color the HUD for the controller, but you can use it however you want. There's also a mobile one down here. And there's a selection method, which is the second of the other way of selecting a building. So the gamepad is currently using this method. So when you press A or face bottom, press select if there's a line trace, and if it has the tag follow, should it follow, and it jumps to actor. Or you can use the building interface and do it that way. There shouldn't be too much you need to customize in here. If you do want to get rid of mobile inputs, then you just want to delete this component out, and then delete this block here, which you can see is marked as delete me, or at least unplug it if you don't need them. If you want to customize like some of the move speeds and stuff like that, the best way is to have a look in the character movement component and tweak a bunch of the stuff in here. With the sole exception of move speed, funnily enough, in options, move speed is in here. Because we have diagonal movement, we can't just limit the controller input because it meant diagonals would move faster. So instead, we hard clamp the speed in blueprints. If we go to the edge HUD, we can draw the edge hitboxes. We can customize the edge thickness, which is the main one you're going to want to worry about. And you can turn on show overlay, which we press play. There we go. There's your overlay, which as you would expect. You want to keep that edge thickness as thin as possible while still working. Plus, in your main camera, there is also a option for completely disabling edge scrolling. So that might be something you want to expose to the end user in their settings, whether or not they actually want edge scrolling. People who use dual monitors and run the game in windowed may not want edge scrolling because they want to tab away constantly. There's a zoom speed modifier, which is your, if I press play and zoom in, you move around, you move slowly. As you zoom out, you move faster. So you can customize this using that curve. And just have a quick look at anything else. In the player controller, I've enabled enable click events and enable touch events for mobile. This is so the buildings, if we go into a building, you can see here we've got actor on clicked. Then we've got a choice of which way we want to do it. And then we jump to actor or jump to location. And this is just to show you how it's done using this method. You can also use the select and the line trace to do the jump instead. Just two options, whichever you prefer. Resources, the same thing that's required for the project. The main thing is the reticle that's used, this guy. And in widgets, we've got a HUD, which just has the gamepad reticle and also the fixed increment buttons. If we go to the graph real quick, we detect the input type whenever it changes, and that defines whether the reticle shows and whether the rotate buttons show. And on rotate, we cast to the camera, and we call the rotate increment whether clockwise or anti-clockwise. That's basically it really. So the majority of code is in the RTS camera. There's lots in here, but you shouldn't really need to tweak anything beyond the options. Just subclass this and start making your game. The way the repulsion system works, and also the floor, is by doing a sequence of line traces to detect certain things. So if I move my head in the building, you can see we get angled upwards and away out the building, so we're never clipping through the mesh. This works with landscapes, it works with buildings, it works with any mesh really. And it's up to you if you want to use that, or if you want to use the Spring Arms default system, which zooms you in. I don't really like the look of that, which is why I've implemented this optional system. And also you can see I've turned on the this debugging sphere at the origin, so you can see what's going on. The other system it has is a floor check, so you can move up and down surfaces because you are a character and you're technically walking, but the character's customized his walk angles and his airspeed so that he can kind of move around very quickly with very little restrictions. So you can see I can move up this giant step that's almost sheer, and if you fall off, you can see you kind of smoothly fall down. Now, depending on your game and how vertical and shapy it is, you may want to go in and customize the air controls on the movement component. These have worked fine for me, but depending on your game, so if you're using a relatively flat game, everything should work fine. If you're using a game with lots of hills, you might feel this kind of is not fast enough, etc. So it's up to you to customize that. And that pretty much covers the majority of it. I think that's all the features. Oh, this because we're using the character component, this system is all fully replicated. Most of this is all local. Like the actual logic is all locally controlled. It doesn't need to be run on the server, with the exception of the actual character movement, but that is already replicated. So there's nothing special needed there. The character movement component automatically handles the server and client side movement. The camera rotation is purely local. There shouldn't be any need to know what those are, and the origin sphere can be used to, you can replace this origin sphere with something you could show to other people should you want to show multiplayer and want to show where their cameras are. Really, with a camera, there's very little you actually need to replicate because people don't really care about what the other person's camera is doing, only what they're doing in their game with their units, which is another project entirely. Okay, so I hope you found this useful and the project looks useful to you. It's fairly substantial. I feel like there's quite a lot in it, it's doing quite a lot for you. Ultimately, the result is quite minimalist. It's simply the fact that it works, everything is smooth. So yeah, hopefully you find this useful. Thanks for watching.